There is a rhythm to this world. A rhythm. We can feel it if we pay close enough attention. A pattern, a pulse, a kind of gravity that seems to govern how things work. And over time, even if we don't like the tune, we still learn how to dance to it, to the rhythm of the way things have always been. The quiet certainty that what goes up must come down, that what is broken tends to stay broken, that disappointment is inevitable, that wounds leave scars, and whatever dies stays that way. We don't say it out loud very often, but we live as if it's true. You see it in the way we watch the news. We scroll past headlines that would have once shocked us. Another conflict, another failure of leadership, another story of someone hurting someone else, tragedy after tragedy, violence after violence, and we shake our heads, not surprised, just tired. As something in us whispers, of course, this is how the world works. You see it in our relationships, the friction we begin to tolerate, the conversations we learn to avoid, the distance we grow to live with, the apologies that are never spoken, the forgiveness that is never quite complete. Because deep down we wonder, do people really change? Can we really change? And more often than not, we answer that question with a quiet no. We see it in ourselves, in the weight we carry, in the quiet anxieties we manage, in the slow awareness that our bodies are not as strong as they used to be, that time is moving in one direction and it is not slowing down. There are moments, maybe late at night or early in the morning, when we feel it most clearly, the sense that life is fragile, that things don't last, that even the good moments slip through our fingers faster than we want them to. And so, over time, we adjust. We manage our expectations. We guard our hearts. We prepare for the inevitable. We tell ourselves things like, don't get your hopes up. Be realistic. It is what it is. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, we begin to confuse resignation with wisdom. We call it maturity. But what we're really doing is learning how to live within the limits of a story where death always gets the final word. Because in this world, that's the way things have always been. But then, there is Easter morning. Matthew tells us that it began like any other morning, shaped by that same old rhythm. Two women are going to the cemetery to do what people have always done, what people still do in the shadow of death, to pay their respects, to mourn, to say goodbye, not to expect anything new. They come carrying spices. They come carrying memories of what was before the quiet ache of what will never be again. They come to continue the long, sad story of how the good, the innocent, the hopeful always get swallowed up in the end. Because they had seen it with their own eyes. They had watched Jesus heal the sick, welcome the outcast, speak the truth with authority and compassion. They had dared to hope that maybe this was the Messiah, the one come to save the world. But then, almost as quickly, they watched him die, agonizingly strung up and executed publicly, brutally, definitively, because a Roman cross does not leave room for ambiguity. And so these two women are drawing near not in anticipation. They are coming in resignation. You love someone, you lose them. You grieve, you remember, and eventually you learn to move on. This is the way things have always been. But then Matthew says, suddenly. And that word alone should stop us, because suddenly sticks out in a world governed by inevitability. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake, Matthew writes. The ground they had always trusted no longer holds steady as the earth itself begins to shake. And like a flash of lightning, an angel of the Lord descends, rolls back, and then sits on the stone that formerly sealed the tomb. The soldiers, the keepers of the grave, symbols of the presumed power and control of the empire, shake with fear and become like corpses themselves. Everything is reversed. The ones assigned to guard death are now paralyzed by life. The systems meant to enforce finality, to maintain the status quo, collapse under the weight of something they cannot explain. The angel says to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised." Did you hear that? Not improved, not remembered. Christ is risen. Jesus is alive. This is not just a surprising twist in the story. This is a disruption. A disruption of the deepest assumption we have about how reality works. Because death, defeat, and loss, as painful as they are, they make sense to us. We can explain them. We can trace the cause and effect. We can follow the logic. We can point to biology, to history, to human nature, and we can say, this is just how it goes. But resurrection? We cannot explain resurrection. It doesn't fit inside the system. It doesn't follow the rules. It doesn't ask permission. It disrupts. And maybe that's why sometimes we try to soften it. We turn it into metaphor. We reduce it to inspiration. We say things like, resurrection means new beginnings, or resurrection is turning over a new leaf. And while there's truth there's also an attempt to tame and manage what is beyond our understanding. But Matthew won't let us do that, because there is no resurrection without God. Easter is more than the arrival of spring after a long winter. Easter is about the God who decisively acts, the God who creates a way when there was no way, the God who brings good out of evil when there was no good to be found. The God who comes back from the dead, who brings life from death to reveal who truly reigns. Beloved, this is no gentle metaphor. This is an earthquake. This is a declaration that the way things have always been are no longer the way things have to be, no longer the way they will be. And that's unsettling, because we have built our lives around the old rhythm of expecting death. We know how to survive disappointment. We know how to manage loss. We know how to protect ourselves from being hurt again. We know how to live cautiously, how to hedge our bets, how to keep hope at a safe distance so it doesn't break us. But resurrection life doesn't let us stay there. It comes out of the tombs we grow comfortable inhabiting. Notice what the angel says next. Come, see the place where he lay, and then go quickly and tell his disciple. Come, see, go. Jesus is not here. He is ahead of you. My friends, resurrection is not an invitation to stand still and admire an empty tomb, to keep it as a mental picture of a promise that we can cash in on when our number is called and our life on this side of things ends. No, resurrection is an invitation to follow a living Christ here and now into a future we cannot fully map out. And that means we don't get to stay where we are. We don't get to cling to what we thought was certain. We don't get to reduce life to what we can explain and control. But this instinct, because this instinct to control, this instinct of ours to define, to manage life on our own terms is not neutral. It really is the very thing that leads us here, standing before a tomb. Because when we insist on deciding for ourselves what is good, what is true, what is right, we cut ourselves off from our Creator, from the life we were made for. And so we lower our expectations. We explain away mystery. We reduce life to what we think we can predict and control. We convince ourselves that death is a natural outcome, our intended destination, simply being a part of the circle of life. But death is not the way it's supposed to be. Death is the result of our self-initiated separation from our Creator, choosing our way over His way. And that rebellion fractures everything. It isolates us within ourselves. It divides us from each other. And eventually, inevitably, it leads to death. It leads to death not because God delights it, but because when we disconnect ourselves from the source of life, eventually, inevitably, on our own, we power down. We fade away. But the gospel disrupts this story we know all too well. As the God we walked away from refuses to walk away from us, coming down and pursuing us in the person of Jesus Christ, choosing to go as far as death itself in order to bring us back to Him. God on the cross, God in Christ on the cross is not an accident. It's not a detour. What happens on the cross is the very heart of our Creator, of God on display. The unconditional, the selfless love that Jesus has been teaching us all along, in its most complete expression, as God willingly lays down His life for us in the name of compassion and forgiveness, in the interest of reconciliation, of restoring us, of making this world whole. And the resurrection we celebrate today is the validation of that work. It is the repair of the rupture. It is redemption, not imagined, not symbolic, not as a metaphor, but as real and living and as eternal as the one who walks out of the tomb. It is the resurrection that transforms the cross, a man-made instrument of torture and death, into a defiant, universal symbol of a love that conquers all, of a love that is stronger than death itself. My friends, the truth is, so much of what we call reason is really just a cage. A carefully constructed system designed to keep us safe from the possibility that God might do something we cannot predict. We tell ourselves, this is just how things are. But what if that's not wisdom? What if that's limitation? What if that's fear? Because resurrection means anything is possible, so long as we're willing to go through the door Jesus opens for us. We have to loosen our grip. We have to admit that God is not confined to the patterns we've grown accustomed to. To live resurrection is to be open again and again and again to surprise, to stop, to look, and be changed. Matthew tells us that the women leave the tomb with fear and great joy. Both. Fear, because everything they thought they knew has just been undone. And joy, because what has replaced it is better than they ever imagined. As they run, Jesus meets them right there on the road, and He says, "Greetings." Greetings. Such a simple word. But in that moment, It carries the weight, the potential of a new creation. As the two women take hold of his feet and worship him, Jesus goes on, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell our former assumptions, our old habits, our previous identity have to die so that something new can live." And again, this is why resurrection is disruptive. Because it doesn't just comfort us, it changes us. To live resurrection life means allowing God to rewrite the story we've been telling ourselves. The story that says, this is just who I am. That relationship will never get any better. This situation is far too gone. This part of me is beyond healing. Resurrection says, are you sure? Because to live resurrection life means stepping into forgiveness when everything in us wants to hold on to resentment. It means choosing generosity in a world that is increasingly shaped by scarcity. It means believing that reconciliation is possible, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. It means daring to hope in places where hope feels foolish. It means becoming a new creation. I think one of the best ways to picture this comes not from a theology book, but from a forest. There is a powerful phenomenon in the old-growth forests of the Pacific Northwest. When a massive ancient tree like a giant redwood or a Douglas fir finally falls, it is a moment of total disruption. As it crashes to the forest floor, it does so with a sound that shakes the earth, leaving a gaping hole in the canopy, crushing everything in its path. To the casual observer, it looks like a disaster, a final, silent conclusion. But in the ecology of the forest, these fallen giants are known as nurse logs. As the fallen tree begins to yield to the earth, it doesn't just decay, it becomes a source of life. The bark traps moisture, the wood provides nutrients, and soon tiny seedlings begin to sprout right out of what looked like the corpse of a giant. Years later, you can walk through the forest and see a row of thriving trees standing in a straight line, a kind of living colonnade that only exist because they grew out of the ruins of what fell before. What looked like a conclusion becomes a beginning. And that is a picture of the great reversal that resurrection brings. Not the denial of our fall, of our brokenness, but the transformation of it. What we thought was an ending becomes in Christ a doorway to possibilities that we could not ever have imagined or hoped for. Resurrection people are those who learn slowly, sometimes painfully, to look at the fallen trees of their lives and trust that God is already planting something new. Even there, especially there. And again, that doesn't happen by going back. It only happens by going forward, into the unknown, into the surprising, into the new life that God is already unfolding. Because when the stone was rolled away and the earth shook, we were given a glimpse of a different kind of world. A world where death does not have the final say. A world where what is broken is not simply managed or written off, but redeemed. A world where injustice is not ignored, but made right. A world where suffering is not meaningless, but is seen, held, and vindicated by the presence of a powerful and living God. Beloved, Easter is not just believing such a world exists. It's about living in it, witnessing to the dawn of a new creation here and now. It is allowing our relationships to be reshaped, not by suspicion and self-protection, but by grace and reconciliation. It is to see other people not as threats or competitors, but as brothers and sisters caught up in the same story of redemption as we are. It is to engage creation, not as something to exploit or take for granted, but as something being renewed along with us. Because resurrection is not just the continuance of life. It is living a different kind of life right in the middle of the world as it is. Because the same God who raised Jesus from the dead is still at work, still disrupting, still shaking the ground beneath our assumptions, still rolling away stones we thought were immovable, still calling us forward. So maybe the question this Easter is not simply, do we believe in the resurrection? Maybe the question is this: are we willing to be disrupted by it? Are we willing to let go? Because if Jesus is alive, the ending is not fixed. Our story is not finished. The rhythm that we have learned is not the only one. There is a deeper rhythm that seeks to turn all our mourning into dancing, a rhythm of grace, of renewal, of a life that refuses to stay buried. And it's already playing. It's already playing, restoring what was broken, reclaiming what was lost, bringing life out of what we perceive as a dead end, assuring us that love, the love of God, the love that is God, the unconditional love that is God, that love and not the grave will always get the last word. Because Easter is not a celebration of what happened. It is an invitation into what is happening, what is unfolding even now. And if that is true, everything changes. Not all at once, not always in ways that we can measure, but truly, deeply, irreversibly. Because Jesus has disrupted the way things have always been. And in so doing, he has opened the door to the way things are meant to be. My friends, today is Resurrection Sunday. And thanks to Jesus, today can be the first day of the rest of our lives.